Question: by whom were immaterial substances created, or is it possible to create them? Answer: it was God who made the angels. Says Bousset, quote, "O God, who can doubt that you could create spirits without a body? Or is there need of a body that one might understand, love, and be happy? You, who are yourself so pure a spirit, are you not incorporeal and immaterial? Are not intelligence and love spiritual and immaterial operations which can be exercised without the need of a body? Who doubts, then, that you could create intelligences of this kind? And you yourself have not left us in doubt, but have revealed it to us." End quote. Question: but at what point of time were the angels created? Answer: it is a matter on which all theologians are agreed, that the 9 choirs of angels were created at one and the same time, that they were not created after the creation of earthly bodies. Some of the ancient fathers, following the opinion of the great and learned Origen, have held that the angels existed for a long space of time, or at least for some time, prior to the point of time indicated by the book of Genesis, where, in its opening verse, it says, quote, "In the beginning, God created heaven and earth." End quote. Among the Eastern Fathers holding this opinion were such holy and venerable names as Saint Basil, Saint Gregory Nazianzen, Saint Chrysostom, Saint Damascene, and among the Latin Fathers, Saint Hilary, Saint Ambrose, Saint Jerome. That is no longer held. On the contrary, the common opinion, which it would be rash to deny, teaches that the angels were created at the same time with the corporal world. The Scriptures, Ecclesiasticus chapter 18 says, quote, "He who liveth forever made all things together." End quote. St. Augustine infers from this that God created all the things of the world in one moment. Nevertheless, it seems the more acceptable opinion that the word together means about the same period, without any notable interval of time elapsing, and is, perhaps, to be understood of collection or community rather than of time. The phrase, "in the beginning," seems to be taken here, as also in the first chapter of St. John's Gospel, as meaning, quote, "in the commencement when created things began to be." End quote. Now, since angels are created things, they seem to be included in this description of the inspired writer. It is thus that Epiphanius, Theodoratus, Venerable Bede, St. Thomas, Suarez, and almost all modern writers write and teach. The definition of the Fourth Council Lateran has been already given. It says, quote, "God created together at the beginning of time out of nothing both classes of creatures, spiritual and corporal, the angelic to wit, and the worldly, and then the human, as a composite of both spirit and body." End quote. The Vatican Council has repeated these same words and embodied them anew in a definition. Now, the juxtaposition of the words together and then seem to point out that the angelic and the corporal worlds are created at one and the same time, but that it was some time afterwards when the humans came into existence. St. Thomas argues, the angels are a part of the universal creation and form a regular grade in that creation. Now, no part can be perfect separated from its belongings, and God's works are said to be all perfect. But the angelic world would have stood by itself, separated from the rest of creation, if it had been created before the sensible world, and therefore, to the eye of the metaphysician, would have been much less perfect than if formed conjointly and simultaneously with the corporal world. It is therefore all but a matter of faith that angels were created at the same time, i.e., simultaneously with the pre-Adamite world, out of whose chaos and void God drew the beauty and order of ours. But why did not Moses mention the angels in Genesis when he was relating the works of the creation? Why did he not give them first place, as they were the most excellent of God's works? St. Jerome says Moses omitted them because he was treating of the visible world only. St. Cyril says because all he proposed to write about was what had reference to man. St. Augustine says that the angels are meant in the word heaven and even in the word light. if this were not well understood among the Hebrews, that people would come to believe that the angels were never created, and therefore eternal. St. Thomas thus explains the secrecy of the great lawgiver on the matter, quote, that if it were openly told to a rude and uncultured people, as the Hebrews were, and so especially prone to idolatry, that beings of such an exalted and beautiful nature existed, possessing such an influence in the world's providence and economy, they would, without doubt, have raised altars and sacrificed to them. End quote. Even Moses' own dead body had by God's providence to be kept secret from them. It is true that in many places Moses speaks of angels, but in such a manner as above all to declare that there is but one God, and to testify that these are no more than his ministers, servants, messengers, and with such care that nowhere do we find it related that the Jews raised idols to them. God created the angels and the stars. How ancient the angels are we do not know, though we know that spiritual and material natures were created at the same moment. Quote, God created the angels and the stars. How ancient the angels are we do not know, though we know that the spiritual and material natures are created at the same moment. In all ways the angels are wonderful to think of, because they are so strong, so wise, so various, so beautiful, so innumerable. End quote. Father Faber, Precious Blood, page 9.